Greetings, friends, and thank you for joining me. I'm delighted today to be talking with Sandra Oh. And Sandra is an award-winning actress known for her roles on Grey's Anatomy and Killing Eve, and a longtime practitioner of Vipassana meditation. So we'll be looking together at how meditation and compassion can help with stress, with creativity, and also how it can guide us in just facing the dividedness of our world. So welcome, Sandra, and I'm just so happy to have you with us today.
Hi, Sarah. I'm extremely excited to be here with you.
Oh, good. Well, I'm going to jump in, and as this compassion challenge, we're kind of centering in on this basic understanding of compassion, that it arises when we get touched by others' suffering, our own and others. And so I was hoping you could tell us about an event or maybe a season of your life that really woke up compassion, that kind of heartfelt care for others, and maybe share a little bit about what you learned.
Sure. I came to the practice of meditation, I think also classically through suffering. I think my suffering is a little unique because basically I became famous. And that was a very destabilizing thing for me. I was also in the process of getting divorced at the same time. But I actually think it was the popularity and the fame and the stress of the success of Grey's Anatomy that was even more destabilizing. Very, getting divorced was also foreign. But that was a very specific and unique set of challenges. And it was challenging on many fronts. Your question about how that brought open compassion, it took a while, because I think what I realized is that when you are in a tremendous amount of stress and you are working extremely long hours and you're destabilized, I found it very difficult to feel gratitude. And I think that I could understand it while so many positive, successful things were happening. It didn't feel like it at all. And actually at that time, which was very, very difficult, I started practicing at Inside LA with Trudy. And I'd say, honestly, for like the first 2 years, I would practice, I'm trying to think if I have a scarf. I would practice sitting down and I would put an entire scarf over my whole head and I would never talk to anybody. But what grew, and this will lead back to your initial question, what eventually grew by coming every Sunday and sitting every Sunday for a couple of years was eventually I was able to take that scarf off. I was able to interact with the members of the Sangha. Really, in a very, very basic way, I think when you are going through a type of suffering and you're not grounded, in like the very, very first level, I found it a stabilizing place. And then afterwards, I felt the practice growing my heart in the way of being able to access something other than stress. You know what I mean? Like I would be so stressed, I would not know what to do. And then I would start doing a lot of self-compassion, a lot of metta. And then also the idea of helping others or thinking of others was actually a very clear way for me to be able to get out of my own stress.
Wow. So what I'm hearing is that initially when you're super destabilized, the stress was too much for any self-compassion or compassion for others. And it wasn't until you actually learned how to quiet your mind, how to settle some, that you could then feel that quality of care for yourself and others, that it actually opened it. And then actually thinking of others got you more and more open.
Yes, I think it was just honestly to move out of the state of feeling uh, feeling unsafe. And this is a difficult thing to even chat about because most people can't understand it. Because for me, my experience, when you lose your anonymity, it made me feel extremely unsafe. And
Mm-hmm.
I think during a time of stress and when you do not feel safe, I think if I felt it almost impossible to even understand what compassion was.
Yeah, that totally makes sense to me. It's kind of like with trauma when you're in a trauma state and you feel extremely unsafe. There's no connection to the parts of the brain that actually have to do with compassion. We're cut off. We're just in fight, flight, freeze under a scarf, you know. Yeah. So I'm glad you took the scarf off.
So, well, it's like eventually I felt there's so much I think of the practice, and then leading that even to my work as an actor.
Hmm.
It is about kind of strengthening a container. It's strengthening the actual. So like my whole job is this whole thing, right? And
Hmm.
how I am able to access whatever is going on in here is part of. These are the tools of my job. But also I feel like going deeper and deeper into the work and my own work is that, and I don't know whether it is also about maturing as well. I need a stronger container.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the practice in my practice is like essential to like building my own muscle mass.
Totally makes sense. So you really are building that safety. And are there particular ways when you today, yesterday, the day before, if you feel some of that sense of unsafe, insecure, that you do you have like a quick go-to way of calling on that container?
Oh, sure. Sure. There's a variety of ways, but like one of those moments where you just realize that you've been in a really bad argument with yourself. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
you have to bring yourself back to it'll definitely be just like, just feel your feet. Look at where you're walking. Look at where you're driving, the bringing it really back into the present. And I
Yeah,
think also just to bring it back to just that first breath, just one.
yeah, yeah. So get it real specific and immediate, kind of nailing the moment to the present right here, and
Correct.
then to that breath.
Correct. I think a lot of my work has to do with the body as well. So kind of always grounding it in uh, my body.
And when you turn on yourself, like you said, that bad conversation with yourself, do you have actual pathways of self compassion where you offer yourself kindness? Do you do that in an active, formal way, or what is your way?
I will say, right now I'm going through like menopause. I'm starting that change, and sleeping is terrible.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So my very quick one is somewhat of a there sweetheart, which
Yeah.
is sort of like it's okay, it's all right, because I'm just experiencing it now very live in my life. This
Yeah.
rush of for me, it's almost like a negative wave that is very very hard to kind of get out of. But I've been practicing long enough that I feel like building my little neural pathway.
Uh-huh.
It's okay can kind of bring me out of it and more and more quickly. And even in that kind of sleepy time or dream time, I can still access that one, like, there, it's okay.
Beautiful. So it's similar the way you described. If you can just remember to feel your feet on the floor, or just remember that one breath, or just remember just the words there, even if you're not feeling it, it starts bringing you back into some sense of presence and kindness. Oh, beautiful. So tell me this, because I know that a lot of listeners that have been fans and following you wonder. So Hollywood is, in addition to just famous, which I can really relate to that bringing up unsafety. Hollywood is so intense with its competition and the fixation on appearances and so on. Is there any way that you hold that really helps you to navigate and not get tugged around so much?
It's so profound, the topic that you're bringing up. And I feel myself only now, or still now, unraveling the layers that have been laid upon me, mm-hmm. and that I've laid underneath for many, many years. So example, my own moment of that was actually when I first received the offer for Killing Eve. And I've told this story before, where I was walking on the street talking to my agent and kind of flipping through the script. And I had to say, so I'm sorry, what part is it? And my agent said, no, Eve.
Uh-huh.
But I felt in that moment, here I am, I would say at the forefront of kind of hacking the way, for, women in their 40s, women of color, Asian women. Mm-hmm. And I felt extremely conscious, as conscious as possible as I'm hacking my way through it. And here I am caught in my own the self-limitation, part of myself, so, and I was just thinking, if it's happening to me, mm-hmm. And I have had a tremendous opportunity as an actor, and I know even more as an Asian American actor. I mean, that hasn't just showed up at my door, but it's I know I have had tremendous opportunity and I have made the most out of it. And I thought, if it is so deep in my bones that I cannot even see myself on this page, then it's way more profound. Yeah. Going back to the question, I will also say that during the past, I started acting professionally when I was about 15. So it's been a long time. And that the change is extremely slow.
Yeah.
I will say, at least for Asian Americans, the past 2 to 3 years has been kind of fantastic. And I'm really trying to hang on to the things that I can really feel that have changed. Because I also am asked this question a lot of the change and mm-hmm. if it is real in Hollywood, I'd say that it is extremely slow. But there's something, again, going back to the practice, that I feel is only and always an opportunity to go deeper. Mm-hmm. Because even as you're saying, as we're going into 2020, the change for, let's say, votes is not going to happen top down. It has to be grown from within. And I think that same way for culture. And I think that same way for change. I think that same way for art. It is slow. It is slow, and it has to be done. If it's really going to make a change, I feel it has to be done through here.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, what you're speaking to feels like the essence of what a lot of us are looking at, which is it's super slow, and yet something in us is sensing there is waking up going on, whether it's racial bias or just the degree of violence in the universe over the decades and eons. And I think of Hollywood and, oh my gosh, I mean, it's got such impact. If you are always seeing the protagonist as a white person, what does that tell you if you're a person of color? And so for a number of us, I mean, there's been a sense of being heartened, the last few years. And you're a prime example. I mean, 2 Golden Globe Awards, you're the first Asian woman to do that. And you hosted the Golden Globes. Yeah, yes. Yeah. And your face you've just been out there enough, Sandra, that it's familiar and beloved to many. And what it does is it lets people that had people of color as unreal others actually begin to sense, oh, you're like me. And the
Mm.
different roles you act, oh, and that shift is what allows us to actually begin to change the world. And it's slow. So I'm aware that for you, it must have been early on, many roles that you weren't even considered for just because of the way you appeared. And
Sure.
that would be deep in your psyche, like, oh, you're not going to consider me because I'm not white.
Yes, and also just the that you're not valid, that you're not seen, and again that is kind of crystallized for me in the moment that I'm walking in Brooklyn, looking at a script, and I can't even see my own part.
That's right.
It's
That's
really,
right.
I was really, it was really a moment of like heartbreak and even shame.
Mm,
You know, but going back to your point of because I've thought about this a lot. What and how can it make change? I remember one time a friend said to me, I was walking across the street and, you know, I looked really different, I thought. And then I don't know how people know who I am, but because I feel like I just look like anyone, they recognize me. And I was like, how can that person recognize me? I'm wearing a hat and glasses and my hair is different. My friend says, listen, you know, you're in people's houses every week.
hmm
So that I kind of think is almost like practice,
Yeah.
which is there's a lot of people who've never seen Grey's Anatomy or never seen the work, right? But because I happen to have been on a very successful show, whether you watched it or not, it's somewhere in the culture. For 10 years, showing up and being for 10 years every week, I do think that creates change where it's just like people are, they don't know why, feel more open or more comfortable when they do see the character, they like the character, but it is the consistency. It's about being in the culture in a constant way, I think, that eventually will make the change. So it is also very important when you were talking about the roles that happen, that the roles shift from, you know, let's say for classically, when I was starting out, there was a lot of like Asian prostitutes, right? There's the whole whack of those, and then you can go on to then like doctors, and then you can go on to like detectives. You know, you can kind of like these are, but you want to eventually move out of it to be the storyteller, one of the storytellers, because if you can do that in a consistent way, you can change things.
Yeah. It takes people out of the stereotypes that immediately who they think another person is, and they're just much more open to actually paying attention to the real person that's there.
Or
So,
someone, you know what I mean? It's like someone who reminds them of, so let's say that maybe the next person they see, maybe you live in a town that doesn't have a lot of Asian people, somewhere deep in the back of your mind, you might think something, oh, that person probably speaks English, as opposed to the first thing that might have been in your mind, which is that person isn't American and doesn't speak English.
that's right. So it changes by association. And the other piece is for other Asian people, other people of color, it lets them know that they're in some way good, beautiful, intelligent, talented. It lets them know that's in them because the culture has honored you. Sandra, there was something you said in an interview I want to share with everybody and have you comment on because I was so struck by it.
Yeah.
Um, and okay, so you had been, I guess, over at your producer's for dinner or something, and this was her daughter who was 10 and had been adopted from China. So you read in an email what this little girl had said, and the little girl had said, "I used to think I was kind of ugly because I had space, and then I met Sandra, and she has squinty eyes and is beautiful, and now I don't think I'm ugly." And then you went on to say, when I read that, I burst into tears because I felt like that when I was 10. And if someone as beautiful and as full of life as she can feel that way, then how many other 10-year-old girls feel that way? And then you asked, how can I transform this? Which is exactly what you're doing by just being out there. But it just so strikes me that whether it's thinking I'm ugly or not as intelligent or whatever it is that the non-dominant populations think, it's not until you are up front in front of them and others are up front teaching them, are being their doctor, that they can start to realize, oh, that was just something that was a message I internalized. It's not true. So I needed to share that because it was so powerful to me.
So much. I haven't thought about that in a long time. There's so much that I feel like so the example of that says so much, because that's what happens when you cannot see yourself in your world, in your culture. That's just an example of, and that's just a small example. And I do think I've thought about this so much of like, what is the experience of young Asian girls? Because many times when they come up to me, the energy is very profound and the energy is very, very strong. And I'm not exactly sure what it's about and what it is that I'm carrying, but it's something that is really, really missing. That's really missing that they need. And one thing that I'm also happy with is that I don't consider myself a typically attractive woman, meaning there are a lot of stereotypes and images of what very attractive Asian movie stars look like. And I know I don't look like it. And I think that that's also something, because it's not only Asian American people, it's like a lot of people of color, but it's also like, there's something that I think that just because I am different in lots of ways is an entrance of just saying, if you are seen, if you are able to be seen and you don't look like Gong Li, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Beautiful, like, movie actresses, then there might be space for me just to exist. You know what I mean? I've always been, because I'm an actor, I'm not a psychologist, but I'm so fascinated by it, is of like, what happens to the psyche when you are not seen, and what happens to it when you are, that kind of a little bit of space. I have said, I said this once, but my own personal reaction, do you remember Joy Luck Club?
Oh, yeah, of course.
So I remember when that came out, it was in the mid 90s, and I saw that film with one of my dear friends and a filmmaker, Mina Sham, and we had just finished making our own film. So we were in the movie theater, we were watching the Joy Luck Club, and we were both, I was having such a large reaction. Like the sobs were so profound, and it was way bigger than what the actual piece of work deserved. Really, it was way, way beyond that. And it wasn't until many years later did I realize that I have been seeing myself through Meryl Streep. I've been seeing myself through Kathy Bates. I've been seeing myself through the people who are telling the story, right? Who are telling the story. But the profound feeling that I did not even know that I had missing for a long time. And for the first time, I see my mother on screen. The first time I see myself on screen. Not the exact same story, right? But it's just the actual visibility of that. I realized that there was a wealth of myself that I had never accessed. And what accessing in that moment was a profound grief that I did not know that I was carrying around. And I see that and I feel that from young people, that they don't even know kind of what it is, what they're doing. And so what is happening to them. But that's my imagination of kind of like the psyche realm of what it is to suddenly see yourself.
Yeah, and this, so to me, what you're saying is so wise and intuitive that if we're not mirrored, if we're not seen and we're not seen as valuable, then we end up constructing a self story that's diminished, and and it's a prison, and we don't even know we're in it. And to me, the grief is a sign of the cracking open into something larger. Like
Yes.
that's a wake up. That's a real wake up. And it feels like it attunes you to all the others, especially young Asian girls and women, that you can feel how they're still in that prison. And that's like when we started with the question about compassion, that's the suffering you're now really awake to, which is so beautiful.
I've wondered recently, because this job is hard. It's hard, and it's hard. It's a hard mind game. Beyond the fact of just being an actor and the practicality in some ways of it, so much of the challenge of being an artist and let's say an actor and an artist is what we're dealing with on our own here.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right? And even starting to awaken myself to the deeper layers of how I feel like I have been imprisoned, and also the deeper layers of how or how much clearer my desire is to be free. And what a lot of times keeps me going, because I know that you have spoken so much just about consciousness, is that I feel like because I know I have been given so many opportunities and privileges, that I feel like that girl who you're talking about, who is your friends' daughters, it's like it's a real gift to be able to have so much purpose in your work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I feel very, very clearly that it has not only been about my own creative drive.
Mm-hmm.
I've always sometimes wondered, it's just like, I don't know where I got so much drive.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a very large well. It's a very deep well. There's times people have said, you shouldn't take too much on, and it's not responsible, and being a role model or whatever. And I get that. And I get that. I know that when it comes down to making my decisions, I mean, it has to be based on what's creatively true, definitely, hands down. Right. But I feel like I've also had the understanding and purposefulness that girl exists, not only having been that girl, but there's so many more. So I'm already so far down the line. Just got to keep going, because if I feel like if I am able to crack that, if you know what I mean, if I'm able to crack it and get free, and people are able to see me do that along the way, somehow the work. So as an artist, right, you do all the work. That's my job. I do all the digging. I spend all the time in my own psyche trying to crack these characters. So you don't have to do the work because you just get to see and experience, and you don't know why you're moved.
Yeah.
Why something breaks your heart or opens your heart. You don't know why something is joyous or not. But that's my job. So I spend the time and going back to the practice, which helps me go down to then come back up. So then I can give it to you.
So part of what I'm hearing, and it's really important, is that you have a drive and you love your work and it's creative and so on, but you wouldn't be able to sustain it. It would be burnout if you didn't have that real deeper purpose, that you belong to something larger and you're serving into it, for that 10-year-old and others, that is a deep, deep place of aspiration in your heart that seems to keep you going even when your job is hard.
Yes.
And yeah. So I guess part of what I wonder is, do you feel like you have partners in that? Do you feel like you are with others who are in a way serving towards the same, that really want to see more actors of color and more inspiration and mirroring for the next generation? I mean, are there others you feel teamed up with, so you're not in it alone in that way?
Oh, very much so. I'd say the time that I started practicing, and was also this time that I met my my acting teacher, and we have this kind of like very wonderful loose collective of actors and writers and musicians and just creative peoples. And that's when everything started fusing together for me. And then that my creative practice and my spiritual practice was basically the same thing.
Beautiful. Yeah.
The same thing. And so in that way, everything was purposeful.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, I got to fight aliens, right? You know what I mean? And you could just go to your job and it could be dumb and you can just pick up a paycheck, right? You could totally could do that. But if the work is the practice, right? The creative practice and the spiritual practice, right? Because you could also be in conflict with the director, let's just say.
Yeah. Yeah.
It can still be purposeful, you know, fighting the alien and arguing with the director, because how you then approach the argument with the director is a part of the practice. So that started all happening for me at all about the same time, probably about 15 years ago. And then so with that loose collective of dreamers, basically, I feel very much aligned with that group of creatives. We are all purposeful, because it's like, I think that everyone who has kind of joined that collective and who have been practicing as long as I have, it's the entire work is not ending up on screen and then winning an Academy Award. That's not the point.
Exactly.
That might be in some ways a part of the drive, or that's what you think that the career is, or that's what you think that the job is. But then you realize there is this whole other world that is more purposeful and richer, and is able to help you bring consciousness.
Exactly. I mean, what you're describing is it's really perfect. And it's very much a part of what I think this whole compassion challenge is waking up out of that sense of me and my work and how's it going to benefit me and how do I look in the eyes of others, to we're in this together. Just like right now in this conversation, it's not to impress for our own impress about who we are. It's like to serve something that we both are part of, that we belong to, and that we that you described. And so I was wondering, maybe as closing, if you might just suggest to all of those listening, kind of in a daily way, what helps when you get caught in the I, to remember that belonging. What helps you?
You know, when I hosted the Golden Globes this year, it was the most petrifying thing I've ever done in my life.
Totally imagine.
Petrifying. It was so crazy. But there was something in this year, I decided to only choose things that really frightened me. Anyway.
Wow.
I was so petrified that I would be shaking. And I was working with my teacher, and she said, you know how to be present. also be part of my job, but I also know that in a way where everyone else can possibly know that, because that could just be the one breath. But
Mm,
I could feel where I feel present, which is like in my hips, you know?
mm, mm.
So like, honestly, backstage behind that curtain, I'm looking at Andy Samberg and they're announcing the host of the Golden Globes. And all I do is, I know how to be present, right?
Mm.
Present. I feel my hips, walk on stage, right? And I think that whatever that might be for anyone, it could be that I know how to breathe. I know how to take one breath. You know what I mean? It can be as small as that, but you know how to do it.
Mm.
For
Mm.
me, I know deeply, when I was so afraid of it. And then, I took a look at the stage at the Beverly Hilton, right? I'm like, I have been on a stage my entire life. There's
Mm.
nothing I'm afraid of, because I know how to be on a stage. I know how to be present. I know how to take one breath.
Beautiful. That's so powerful because it's really the message. It's like, can we take refuge in presence? Of course, we know how to feel just this breath or feel our feet on the floor or our hips. Um, Beautiful. Thank you so much. Really, that just so helpful to so many. I appreciate you being in the conversation. I know how crazy busy your life is, and you have a lot of fans and those of us listening, and it's been a real inspiration. So many
So
blessings, dear.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.